I recalled over Father's Day here that I've literally become my father. Dads, you remember the things that your dad used to say to you, and then you catch yourself and you're like, I've become my father. I've become my father. I was eating French fries at a fast food restaurant with my son Xavier, and I took one of his fries, and he looked at me, Dad, those are my fries. Even though moments ago at the front counter, I had purchased those fries. And in my mind, those are my fries. All of the fries are mine. In fact, everything on this table is mine. He looks at me and goes, Dad, don't eat my fries. I said to him something that triggered a memory. I said, son, if I chose to, I could bury you in fries. The exact same thing my dad said to me when I took one of his fries. We're a product of our fathers, whether you know it or not. Happy Father's Day, everybody. If you're a father, it's your day. Eat what you want. Enjoy it. If you're not a father and you're, expecting to be, buckle up. It only gets better and harder. Some of you have a great relationship with your dad. They're here with you. Some of you have a horrible relationship with your dad. You haven't talked to him in years. Some of you, your dad has passed away. Some of you wish your dad would pass away. I mean, we could go through the gamut of the emotions that come up on days like this for specific reasons that I don't know, but he knows with your life and your father. But let me just give you the truth here. The truth is this: for better, for worse, we are a product of our fathers. You have a father. There's good and there's bad, and it's impacted your life. Abraham Lincoln. And by the way, let me just simply say, I think we live in a time where we need some more Abraham Lincolns in our nation. People that don't see us as colorblind, but see us as color rich. People that understand that 77 years ago, our forefathers conceived a new nation on this continent dedicated to the idea, to the proposition that all of us are created equal and by God. That's how he saw the world. He says this at a famous battle at Gettysburg. He even writes a document called the Emancipation Proclamation, and with those very words, set peoples free. Alter the course of history forever, ringing out into the world. That's the kind of person he was. That didn't just show up in his life, by the way. And it just out of the blue, Abraham Lincoln woke up one day with a really wicked beard, and he was a vampire slayer, and he had a top hat, and he was Abraham Lincoln. That was a process. In fact, Abraham Lincoln is a seventh-generation American family that was known for their integrity, their temperance, their public service, and how they saw the world. 7 generations had passed, and fathers were impacting sons, and sons were taking what their fathers had impacted them in and impacting their sons. And then 7 generations later, you got Abraham Lincoln, and people are free because of what great-great-great-great-great-grandfather had started in that home. Truth is this: for better, for worse, you're impacted by your father. So let's talk a little bit about the better, okay? There's a story I read. As the story goes, there's a dad who buys an amazing new couch with his hard-earned money. Linen, beautiful fabric from a high-end furniture store. Very expensive couch. And this couch is delivered, and only days later, his son, finds a red Sharpie marker in the drawer of their home. You kind of see this coming, don't you? I mean, it's too good to be true. New couch, expensive, linen, red Sharpie in the drawer, unattended. Well, gas and matches happen, and the son finds the Sharpie marker and goes and graffitis the couch. Writes all over the cushions, the pillow. I mean, completely makes this a work of art in his mind. What does the dad do? The story goes, the dad walks up to the son, and in a moment where you'd think he'd lose it. Dads, have you ever lost it? Don't look at me like you haven't. you know what I mean, losing it. In a moment where he thought he'd lose it, he kept his cool and he was composed. And the story goes where the dad looked at the son and he just simply said this, "Son, you are more important than the couch." The Father overlooks the marks that we make on the couches of our lives, and I'm going to give you grace. And where did this dad learn this? Well, that dad tells a story about when he was a kid, and his dad bought a brand new tractor, Ford F3000 to be exact, as the story goes. And this son, who was the father of the son with the marker, took his dad's tractor, the first time he ever had used it, and went out in the fields and in the central part of Wisconsin and took it from, bunny, or from turtle to bunny, and, from low to high, and he took off trekking through the fields of Wisconsin only to have the snow bucket start to bounce uncontrollably because of the suspension and the side, and then the bucket rips off the front of this tractor. The tractor goes up over on top of the bucket. Hydraulic fluid is spraying in the air like Old Faithful at Yellowstone National Park. And this son is strapped in like he's in Apollo 13, and the tires are digging in. And the dad shows up on the scene with his friend, and he looks at the son. The son thinks his dad's going to lose it. And what does his dad say? "Son, you are more important than the tractor." The story also goes, "Son, if Daryl Christensen wouldn't be here to my right, I would kill you." That dad who said that just happens to be sitting in the second row, and he happens to be my father. And that son with the marker happens to be sitting right there. That's Xavier. And I'm caught in the middle. Give it up for my dad. Dad, wave. And give it up for my son. And some of you remember my mom from Mother's Day. I called her 3 services. There she is. Thanks for coming to church. Happy Father's Day, Dad. Thanks for not killing me with the tractor. And Xavier, don't color on the couch. A little bit about the better. The fathers impact our life for better, for worse. So now let's look a little bit at the worse, okay? So get your Bible out. If you don't have a Bible, stay at a hotel. It's one in the drawer, just take it. 2 Samuel chapter 3, verse 2. I just want to establish something for you briefly. 2 Samuel 3, verse 2. Sons were born to David. He has Amon, which means faithful. He has Chileab, which means like dad. He has Absalom, which is father is peace. He has Adonai, which is God's provision. He has Stephaniah, which is God is judge. And then he has Ephraim. And you go through this, David has 6 boys, okay? 6 boys. Now, those of you that have 3 children, anytime you go more than 3 children, I got the best illustration I've ever heard I can give to you what that feels like. If you have 3 kids and you're thinking about going to 4, here's what Jim Gaffigan says, a comedian. He says this, and I quote, "Imagine you're drowning in water and somebody hands you a baby." That's what having 4 kids is like. And those of you that go beyond that, you're just totally, you need air. If you've got 2 children, you're sort of man to man. If you've got 3, you're in a zone. If you got 4, you're drowning. If you have 1 child, don't talk to me, okay? We can't be friends because you all talk about, oh, I had a baby and it's been a big transition and it's really hard. Oh yeah? You have 1. You have a goldfish. You have like a puppy. You can bring them anywhere, right? You get to 2, we'll talk. You get to 3, we're friends. You get to 4, I will bow at your feet. David's got 6 boys. And like boys or kids, they watch their father. What does David do? Let's see how it unfolds. Flip the page over to 2 Samuel chapter 11. Now evening came, and David arose from his bed and walked around on the roof of his house, and from the roof he saw a woman bathing. The woman's name was Bathsheba. It wasn't his wife, and she wasn't exactly in a swimsuit. Let's just try not to imagine that, but moving on. The woman was very beautiful in appearance. You got a king who's in his kingdom, and he happens to see a woman bathing across the way from his roof, and he is immediately vexed. His heart is filled with lust, not love. There's a difference. And he looks at her and he says, I got to have her. So he sends for her. And guess what happens? Verse 5. She walks in and she says, I'm pregnant. It's like this morning, Danielle rolled over and she said, Happy Father's Day, Eric. And I'm like, and Happy Father's Day like for the three, or Happy Father's Day surprise? No, Happy Father's Day. I'm like, okay, good. I mean, that's a shocker to anybody who's married when your wife tells you that she's pregnant, but it's a shocker, especially if she's not your wife and you saw her bathing and you sent for her, and now everybody's going to find out because this baby's going to be born. David's got a problem. So what does he do? Well, as the story goes, he takes Bathsheba and he kills her husband. That's how that ends. Let's keep reading. 2 Samuel 13. Now Absalom, the son of David, had a sister who was beautiful, and her name was Tamar. And Ammon, the son of David, loved her. Now, if you really study this, Ammon was so frustrated, he was so lovesick because he had an inappropriate attraction for his sister. He had an attraction for a woman that he couldn't be with. Does that sound familiar? You got a dad walking on a rooftop who sees a woman who he's attracted to that he can't be with. Flip the page in the Bible, you've got a son who has a sister who's attracted and he can't be with her. So what does he do? He violates her in verse 14. It's a disgusting story. And David is angry, but he does nothing. I mean, Absalom, the son of David, since his dad didn't do anything, and by the way, dads, this is a great illustration of what an active parent should be. And when dads, you're not involved in the mess of your kid's life, this kind of stuff happens. So be active in it. You know who dads, you know who should be talking to your kids about sexual identity, about those things that they learn on the playground? You know who should be talking about those things way before they hear about those things? You. That's who should be talking to them. You get this moment here where Absalom, David's son, who knew what his brother Ammon had done, says, hey, Dad, we're going to go sheep shearing in verse 24 with these knives and blades. And Absalom took his brother Ammon, and they went to the sheep shearing hut. And then he looks at the servants in verse 28, and he says to them, kill Ammon. And they kill him. Sound familiar? I mean, does it sound like what Dad did? So you got Dad, who did. I mean, if Dad did, he saw a woman he couldn't have. Why can't I? If Dad killed a guy, why can't I? Why can't I kill my brother? Here's the bottom line that you've got to pull from David's life here is this, and this principle is here. David is bound to the wrong things, and therefore his sons are bound. Fathers, when we have these things that surface in our life, it will echo into other people's lives. There's a lot on the line, dads. And where we're bound, we will create an atmosphere of authority that is bound. So let's go to Jesus and the strong man. Chapter 12 of the book of Matthew. Flip there if you can. Chapter 12, book of Matthew. Then the demon-possessed man who was blind and mute brought to Jesus, and he healed him so that the mute man spoke and saw. And Jesus, when he does a work in your life, it's a full restoration. It's not partial, it's complete. He heals you both, not or, but both. And he heals this man, the mute man. He speaks and he sees. And the crowds were amazed, and they said, this man cannot be the son of David, can he? Put that on the back burner. The crowd sees Jesus do this amazing miracle, and immediately they say, can he be the son of David, can he? And just put that in your back burner. The crowd's reaction to this healing is this question. can he be from the house of David? Can he be the one? It continues the story. The Pharisees say, this man Jesus cast out demons only by a power of another demon, the ruler of demons named Beelzebub. The Pharisees do what they're supposed to do. They cast judgment. That's their job. In ancient Hebrew culture, the Pharisees made decrees. The judicial system was the Pharisees. They would bind or loose people into the realities based on Torah. Jesus even says in Matthew 23, you can read about it for yourself. Jesus says, they bind heavy burdens and lay them on men's shoulders, but then themselves are unwilling to loose them with as much as a finger. The Pharisees' job is to bind and loose, to make public declarations what is prohibited and what is allowed. Does that make sense? So when you bind something, you would say it's not allowed. When you loose something, you say it's what? Allowed. The Pharisees, that's their job, to bind and to loose. And there's things in the Torah that it covered, and they would walk up to a rabbi and they would say, hey, do you bind me? Do you prohibit it? Or do you loose it? Do you permit it? And the Pharisees would say, well, what is in the Torah? Well, it just says this. Well, go and do that. I bind you, I prohibit it, or I loosed it. If Torah binds it or looses it, it means you could or couldn't do it. And there's a lot of things in Torah that were bound and loose. But what about the gray areas where the things aren't so clear? That's when they would need a judgment call. That we need someone to give them what they were to do. So they would ask the Pharisees, do you bind or do you loose this? Do you say it's okay or do you say it's not okay? That's happening in our culture a lot right now. Because there's a lot of things where we hear about, well, Jesus didn't talk about it. Really? Sure. Jesus didn't talk about it. Okay, well, let's talk about what he did talk about. Let's look at what all the other things. But here's the bottom line. We ask these questions because in the gray areas, we want to know. And can I just simply say, backtracking to some of the dysfunctional sexuality that exists in our day today, the opposite of dysfunctional heterosexuality is not heterosexuality, it's holiness. The opposite of homosexuality isn't heterosexuality, it's holiness. The opposite of both of those twisted realities of God's intention and his perspective is holiness. That goes for me and that goes for you. That goes for us. We're in this together. We're all broken. Whatever that is. I just want you to understand this idea of binding and loosing. And where this responsibility was placed, it's on the Pharisees. Let me put it to you another way. Is there a dad in here that's sitting next to your wife and let's just simply say at times in your dietary day, she would bind things to you. And she would loose things to you. Al, for sure? So what is your name?
Linda.
Hey, Linda. Linda, I've got a Dunn Brothers cinnamon roll with cream cheese icing. The bottom was still warm, second service. I went there this morning to pick it up. Remember, Linda, it's Father's Day. I'm going to ask you a question. Do you bind Al from having this delicious cinnamon roll, or do you loose him to having this? It's Father's Day. Do you bind him, prohibit it? He can't have it. It's Father's Day. Look at that. Oh, it's like angels flew out. Like I open this up and I'm pretty sure angels like, oh. Or do you loose him into the reality of having this cinnamon roll? It's Father's Day, Linda. Bind or loose?
It's not my decision. It's between him and Christ, so he has to see if his conviction is clear.
Oh, wow. She's going deep on this one. Linda, you have complete control of this situation. You are making a judgment call. Do you bind or do you loose?
But it's not in my power to bind.
Okay. Who's sitting next to a wife who has bound them? Hey. Bind or loose?
Loose that baby.
Loose that baby. There you go, Del. Al. Sorry. I tried. She's a theologian. Del, you're loose into that cinnamon roll. And you owe me half. It just so happens I've got an extra cinnamon roll because I have a similar situation I've seen in my family where my mother has bound my father. She says, oh, you can't have sugar, butter, and happiness. You know what I say today? Happy Father's Day. Yes, you can. Dad, I loose you into that cinnamon roll. Xavier, get your hands off that. Jesus, at the end of this parable, because the Pharisees accused Jesus' power coming from a demon, Jesus answers that with the parable. They say, this guy who just healed the dumb and deaf and the mute and the blind, you know what he says to him? Well, listen, how could Satan beat Satan? If Satan is competing against Satan, it's a tie. But something more powerful than darkness has to overcome darkness for it to be done. Jesus then says this, and it's a very common Jewish statement that comes out of the book of Isaiah. No one plunders a strong man's house. If there's a strong man, you can't plunder the house. You got to overpower the strong man before you take the house. Jesus says, how can anyone, verse 29, how can anyone, Jesus, enter a strong man, the devil's house, and carry off his property, this man, unless he first has bound and defeated the devil? Then I can go and plunder his house. Jesus is saying, I've already defeated the powers of darkness. I'm stronger than what was in this man. And let me just simply say, whatever has power over you, Jesus has power over it. The strong man is bound because Jesus is the one who is stronger. It does not teach, by the way, in the New Testament here, this is not teaching for us to bind anything. This is an answer that Jesus is saying to a question of if he's operating underneath the power of Beelzebub. Fathers, I have a question for you. Fathers, I have a question for all of you dads who have kids, especially at this stage in your life. Grandparents, grandfathers who had kids and they're launched, you think your season's over, but they're never not your kids. And your grandkids are your kids all over again. It's just one generation removed. So I got a question for you dads. Serious question. All the fathers that are here. If the enemy is after your kids, if the enemy is after your house, if the enemy wants to destroy your family, rip apart your marriage, wreck all of the things that are going to come out of your life that you don't even know are yet, you don't even perceive. If the enemy's going to try and thwart the purpose that God has for you, if the enemy's going to try and kill, steal, and destroy, who is he going to go after in your home? No one plunders a house of a strong man. So if the enemy can defeat you, Dad, your house is in dangers. Fathers, this is the reality I got to tell you. And I'm looking in the mirror when I say this. Fathers, you cannot remain bound or your house will be in danger. You cannot remain tied up in secret sin. You cannot remain tied up in anything but the fruit of the Spirit. You cannot remain tied up in dysfunctional living. You cannot remain tied up or bound to the things, because if you are, your house, I'm telling you, your house is at risk. The spiritual authority, not your physical brick and mortar house, but the people that are underneath your covering, they are at risk when you are bound. Let's flip the page to Matthew 16. Matthew 16, verse 13. The disciples saw Jesus, and Jesus asked the question, who do the people say that I am? And some say John the Baptist, others Elijah, some say Jeremiah, but then Jesus turns and looks at his disciples, but he says, who do you say that I am? And Simon Peter says, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. Now remember what the crowd said? in verse 23 of chapter 12. This man cannot be the son of David, can he? Notice what Peter doesn't say by saying what he said. He says, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. You are not the son of a dead King David. You are the Son of God. And your spiritual authority and atmosphere has changed it as such. And your Father makes all the difference in the world. Jesus, fully God, fully man, is the Son of God, first, primary, and then his natural human lineage is in the tribe of David. You can read about it for yourself in Matthew 1. Abraham, David, Jesus. And Peter says this, you're the Son of God, not the son of a dead king. You're the son of a risen king. You're the son of the King of Kings. You're that son, not that son. You have a different kingdom, a bigger kingdom than the kingdom of brick and mortar. And Jesus says, Simon Bar-Jonah, blessed are you because flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father, the Spirit, who is in heaven. I'll also say to you, Peter, small rock, Petros, that upon this rock, Petra, I will build my church. Not, Peter, I'm going to build my church on you. You're a little stone. You're going to be on the big stone, and that's what the gates of hell do not prevail against. Me. Because I have conquered the strong man. And then he says to the father of the church, the first person here, the first stone in a lineage of stones, he decrees to him this, I will give you the keys of the kingdom, not the kingdom of David, because I'm not the son of David in a sense here. I'm the son of God. I'm not going to give you that king. I'm going to give you the kingdom of heaven, that whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. And up until this point, the Pharisees would give the judicial decrees of what is prohibited and what is loosed or allowed, what is no and yes. And the Pharisees were the one that did that until this verse right here. Jesus says in the new covenant, those that walk in the Spirit will have the authority to bind and loose. That's us. And that's a big responsibility. Jesus says this, whatever you bind will be bound, what loose will be loosed. And fathers, I'll say this, for better or worse, you're a product of your father and the spiritual atmosphere that you create. And fathers, if you are bound, you are creating an atmosphere that is bound. The spiritual authority that God has given you, dads, the place where he's called you to steward and reclaim, restore, repair, if you're bound, the atmosphere that you operate in will be bound. What is released in the heavens will be loosed. What is bound will be bound. There's spiritual authority that you operate in, dads. There's a lot on the line. I saw this front row of my life. Many of you know I travel all over the world and I do what I do that God's called us to do. And sometimes it's hard. You ever feel like quitting? I do. You know what my dream job is? Hey, come on in. Yeah, put this lead blanket on your body. Okay, I can't talk to you about it. The doctor will do it. Next. Next. That's my dream job. Because I go home and it stays there. And some of you have that job. And you're like, that's not a dream job. I wish I had your job. Isn't that funny how that works? We always want what we don't have. But we get tired, whether you're in a job where you push a button on an x-ray or you go and speak to people and let the Holy Spirit give them an x-ray. The truth is we just get tired with the pressures of life and fatigue and parenting and all the unknown and all the fear that Pastor Jim just even addressed. And I was mad at my house. It's like, man, I'm so sick of this. Everything is a mess. I can't handle this disorganization. We got kids, we got crap everywhere. Who needs all this stuff? Take it to the dump. Anybody ever want to just take your house to the dump? Like your whole house. You're just like, see this closet? Take it to the dump. Like if they had a container that could just come and put my house in it and just give me a different one. And so I shot my mouth off at home. I just started using some language, not choice language, but I just said, this is stupid. This is too overwhelming. I hate this. This is so hard. I'm done. The next night, Xander, my 4-year-old's brushing his teeth. Can't find his strawberry Tom's toothpaste. Puts his toothbrush on the counter. This is so stupid. I'm done. I can't find my toothbrush. Can't find the toothpaste. And I'm watching me, but it's him. And fathers, if you're bound, the atmosphere you're created is one of binding. And the truth is too, if you're permitting things that are unhealthy, the atmosphere you're permitting is also being permitted. If you're bound or loose in the wrong things, we're binding and loosing the wrong things. The spiritual authority that we govern. I got a question for you, dads. What are you bound in? You know what I'm saying? Like the secret places of your life. Is it anger? Is it lust? Is it discouragement? Is it dishonesty? Is it alcohol? I don't know what it is, but I do know this. The atmosphere you're creating, they will feel those repercussions. Whatever you are bound in, people will be bound in around you. They may not be bound in the same way you're bound in, but it will have an effect on your home. And if the enemy can get you like this, if the enemy can tie you up like this, no one plunders a strong man's house but before tying up the strong man. And the enemy on Father's Day wants to see you live another year, and another Father's Day will pass by, and this will be you. That's what the enemy wants for your life. Jesus wants this for your life. That's what he wants. That's what this church wants. In fact, I'd rather give you not an entertaining message, but a message of freedom. I care more about your freedom than I do your entertainment. So does this church. Pastor Jim said we don't sing these songs for fun. We don't have men's jam for fun. We don't have different Bible studies all over the city that just have intrinsic. People don't do those things for fun. Dads, there are all kinds of different ways. Sunday school and before church, Andy uses this term a lot, lingering. Dads, there's all kinds of ways that you can find people in your life. We have ministries that are literally here so you don't have to live like this. So dads, I want to ask you, is it your time? Don't wait another year. Wake up. Wake up, fathers. Because there's a lot on the line. A lot on the line. And I didn't want to preach this message, but I'm looking in the mirror. My dad said something to me the other week. The best message you'll ever preach, Eric, are the ones when you look in the mirror. Coming from a preacher for 30 plus years. And he's right. And the places where I'm bound, my kids, I put them at risk. If I'm bound, my house is at risk. Fathers, wake up. Our time is now. Your time is now. This year that's in front of you, it's now. It's the time to deal with it. I'm going to paint for you. And Holy Spirit, I loose you to show you where you're bound. Look inside your heart, dads, because your time's now.
Where are the leaders? Where are the teachers? Where are the keepers of every home? There's an emergency greater than any other. Where are the ones who fight for their own? Calling all fathers, run to your children. We've fallen asleep and darkness has come. We will find strength in the name of Jesus. Calling all fathers, wake up.
every single father in this room that are dealing with chains can find freedom with 4 keys that need to show up in your life this year. Dads, don't settle for your chains. D, don't settle for your chains. Put it up on the screen. Dads, don't settle for your chains. Point number 1. This isn't the life abundant that Jesus is talking about. Your chains are not freedom. Don't settle for them. Don't settle into the way that that's just, it's supposed to be that way and I just can't deal with it. A, ask for accountability. Second point, ask for accountability. You can't do it alone. You're not built to do it alone. Men, we need each other. Ask for accountability. Ask for somebody to help you in what you need help in. D, declare your right to be wrong. Dads, you may not have the right answer on this. Declare your right to be wrong. Submit yourself to the work of the Holy Spirit. And S, set yourself up for success, Dad. Don't go on rooftops in the middle of the night taking baths. Dads, 4 keys. This is how you are to live. You see, when we don't deal with these things, I guess the only way I can really show you or illustrate to you what happens when we are bound to the wrong things as dads, the atmosphere and spiritual authority that we carry becomes one that is bound. My son Xavier, if I look like this, what is he going to look like? If I look like this, what is he going to look like? Like this. Grandparents, uncles, fathers, grandparents, your time is now. This is the year of Jubilee. I declare freedom over your life. Dads, don't settle for these chains. Ask for accountability. Declare your right to be wrong. And set yourself up for success. Because when I'm loosed, like the Father in heaven, you can be loosed too. The soundtrack of your life this year. That. There's a word when a husband loses a wife. What's the word? He's a what? Widower? When a wife loses a husband, what's the word? Widow. When children lose their parents, what's the word? Orphan. But when a dad loses their son or their daughter, we don't have a word for that. We say things like, well, he lost his son, lost their daughter. We don't have a word that sums that up in our language. Why is that? Because it's not the way it's supposed to be. Dads, don't lose your sons. Don't lose your daughters because you're bound. The atmosphere and spiritual authority you create will create an atmosphere of authority, and it'll be released to your children, your children's children. And Xavier, as your dad, I will tell you this before this entire church, that whatever seeks to bind me in our house, we will do our best and let God do the rest to be free. Because I will not lose you, but I will loose you to the right things. You're my son. Pastor Jim and a few other board members just would like you to make yourself available. Any of the other pastors that are in here, can you come down here with me? We're going to close this service just a little differently. I would just simply say this. If you need to go, you are free to go. But if you are a dad, and this is your Father's Day, and you have this, your time is now. Maybe you need to pray with someone. Maybe you need to talk to somebody. We're here. We're here for you. Thanks for coming to church, everybody. We loose you from what you're bound in.